Hey, Bobby Manning here. We are live on the Garden Report from TD Garden for, I guess Sean Grandy said, the worst home opener lost in over 10 years.
Oof.
115 to 83 is the final. Celtics flat on offense, not getting back in transition. And my biggest takeaway as I watched the Raptors just run away with this in the second half was how much this looked like last year. You had the boos raining down from the crowd. You had frustration with officials. And the Raptors just layup lines in transition. And all of a sudden we're left with the same question with a new coach. Why can't they get up? Why can't they play with energy and bounce back from rough stretches like that 16-4 run in the first half?
You know, it's funny. We saw that a little bit in game one, right, against the New York Knicks. I feel like we saw that, but from halftime on, from the Celtics. You know, they came with that energy in the first quarter. It was on both ends of the floor, and then it just deteriorated. I mean, Al Horford had a lot to do with that. 5 blocks in the first half. We got guys, making stops when they could in that first quarter. The offense was trying to find their groove, and then you have a team like the Toronto Raptors, because of their athleticism, because of their length, because of how they're playing defensively as a cohesive unit, buckled down so hard on the Celtics that they reverted back to being their old selves.
And it felt like Ime Udoka fell into a trap of some kind, too, because Jason Tatum got going early. He was able to attack that mismatch with Fred VanVleet, but they got sucked into that. And all of a sudden, Jaylen Brown had only 4 shots in the first half. Guys weren't getting their touches, and it felt like the defensive energy dropped off that. And Brown, you've talked about this a ton, just kind of disappeared from this game after a 46-point opener. And I can only assume part of that is just him not getting the touches, him not feeling that involvement within the flow of the offense.
Right, and not getting stops, right? And that's not a discredit to Jaylen Brown. We know how good of a defender he is, but we also know that he can get in his own head a bit, and that goes for a lot of these guys on this team. Again, reverting back to those old habits is going to be an issue, I think, out of the gate, especially when you don't have a whole lot of home games. I thought this was a great opportunity for them to come out here and get a win, especially having the day off, after a double overtime thriller. Sure, you lost, but they showed a lot of heart in that game, and to see them bounce back the way they did with this, I'm not going to say I'm concerned, but it's one of those games.
I'm concerned. How can you not be after a loss like that?
It's still early, but it's one of those things where you're going to see where Ime, he's being put to the test right now, I think. I don't think it's going to be one of those things where this team has to turn it around ASAP, but seeing how Ime approaches this is going to be interesting, especially with especially with rotations, especially with this front court, after Jason Tatum, after Jaylen Brown. I mean, if one of these guys have a cold night, where is his offense coming from, And if you're not going to be one of those top defensive teams, then you're going to run into games like this a lot more often than you want to.
They missed Al Horford, too, as a tone setter throughout this one. When he came in and sparked those transition runs with outlet passes and things like that, the block shots we talked about, that got them going on some runs. But he was limited to 25 minutes coming back from COVID. And when you dig down deeper into that center rotation, you end up with Grant minutes at the center spot here. Doesn't feel like Ime trusts Bruno Fernando, Enes Kanter, some of those other guys. So they're short right now in their rotation.
Absolutely.
They don't trust Aaron Nesmith. So where do you go from here? Romeo Langford was rough in this one. They don't have a lot of combinations, it feels like, that they can mix and match. And Udoka asked about his regret in game one. I sort of looked at the rotations there. Like, did I find the right mixes and matches in that one? There were some brutal stretches where Grant was getting lit up in the half court in that game. So I don't know. Do you shake up the starting rotation now? Do you mix and match who's playing together? Where do you go from here?
I don't know if you have to go out there and shuffle the entire starting lineup. I mean, he may do that. I don't think it's necessarily that, but the rotations, I think it's going to be interesting to see what he does, what kind of changes he does. I thought Hernan Gomez is someone that in the preseason,
another guy who's missing early.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen a whole lot of him, but from what I've seen, he seems like the type of guy that can, 1, stretch the floor, 2, run the floor, keep up, defensively, which I think this team often falls behind when they can't keep up, in the transition defense. And then also, just to shake it up and give the rotation something new. Again, we've only seen it in stretches. We've seen it in the preseason, but we've seen when this team shares the ball. When it's a equal opportunity offense, and I don't mean that everyone has to get amount of touches, but in the sense where it's the ball's moving, guys are finding open, looks, and you're unable to allow a team to trap you the way the Toronto Raptors trapped the Celtics. I saw the way they were defending Marcus Smart. I thought they did a terrific job of not letting him get into the paint, but taking out the
and
baseline.
letting him launch.
Yeah, letting him launch a bit, but also you take away the baseline and you give him no other option but to either take a wild shot or make a bad turnover, and he did that a couple of times.
I'm glad you mentioned Smart. Still no field goals within the arc this year. I think he's 5 of 20 from the field as a whole. Not great from the three-point arc, 0 of 4 in this one, and shot that long one on the right wing that had the crowd going, oh.
Literally, yeah.
Smart's got to be better as the floor general. He's got to have the feel for this team. He's got to be the organizer because that's his role this year.
And we knew it was going to be an adjustment. But again, when you have guys like Jaylen Brown was cold tonight. Jason Tatum in stretches he could find his offense, but then he also ran out of that juice that the Celtics tend to rely on, especially in the fourth quarter. Who's going to be that third guy? I mean, we saw that from Al a bit. I think Al could be that third scorer. But other guys, we talked about Schroeder. We talked about how the wing depth. They're not going to always rely on them offensively. But when they're getting zero or close to nothing, in terms of some sort of flow and offensive rhythm, this is going to be a problem. You're going to run into teams that are going to hold you to under 90 points, and you're going to have to become one of these top defensive teams if you want to be a top 4, top 5 team in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, you don't have interior scorers. You don't have a lot of shooting. Even on a night where Josh Richardson, probably the best you could have asked for, 4 from 3 from him.
Right.
Not enough to even push you close to 100. So depth of scoring on this team, an obvious concern early on, and compete level, surprisingly 2 games in, already becoming a question under a new head coach. For Josue Pavon, Bobby Manning, the Celtics are 0-2, and they are on to Houston as part of a number of road games early on this year. So stay tuned with CLNS Media, the Garden Report, and the Celtics postgame show as we continue to cover this team night in and night out through the 2021-22 season.